Hello everyone and welcome. I'm Alexandra from Stripe, and today we are going to discuss a really important topic. Today is May 21st and it marks the 15th annual Global Accessibility Awareness Day, a day dedicated to starting conversations about digital accessibility, inclusion, and the experiences of people living with disabilities. So, today we are discussing email accessibility, not as an ideal, but as a real production challenge. So, we'll talk about where accessibility still breaks down in practice, why some issues are so persistent, and how teams can improve things without turning every email into a slow, painful process. So, let me introduce our expert guests. Mark Robbins, developer advocate at Customer.io, focused on supporting and educating the email developer community while promoting accessible, standards-based email development. Also, Mark is an admin at the Email Markup Consortium and contributor to many open source email resources. Hi, Mark. Nice to have you here.
Hi, thanks a lot for having me.
Our next expert, Mike Piello, Chief Accessibility Officer at ODOI, founder at WebAble, and a globally recognized pioneer in digital accessibility. With over 4 decades of impact, he authored the first book on web accessibility, led key standards initiatives, and founded TPG. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Alexander. Thank you for having me on. Good to be with Paul and Mark.
Thank you. And Paul Airy, accessibility and usability consultant and the founder of Beyond the Envelope. For the last 15 years, Paul has been at the far front of advocating for accessible email. After turning to typography to enhance the recipient experience, he wrote his book, A Type of Email. Hi, Paul.
Hello. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. And Dmytro Kudrenko, founder and CEO of Stripe. Dmytro is an entrepreneur with over 25 years of experience in software development, including 15 years in email marketing. Dmytro is an expert in email marketing automation and certified specialist in lead management and email messaging. Thank you all for joining us. We will have 2 parts today. First, the panel discussion, and then around 10 minutes for audience QA. So please feel free to drop your questions into the chat as we go. So let's get started. Dmytro, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for joining us, Mark, Mike, Paul. And we just discussed, we had a 5-minute discussion before the session going live. And it takes for everybody of us about 15 years working with accessibility. And today is the big day, Accessibility Day, and happy to discuss. And I would like to start with something generic, just as a start point, and discuss with you where does email accessibility most often break down in a real production today. So, Paul, let's start from you.
Yeah, I think simply the pace of work that teams are trying to get so much done in such a short time that often accessibility becomes the last thing that they think about rather than being integral in the process. So it kind of gets dropped away. And either that or it comes too late in the process and in the coding stage, and where copywriting and the creative hasn't been considered, and it the burden falls on the coding, which already you've got some broken issues there. And as well as that, simply because of that time challenge, teams can not know what to do. The knowledge might not be there to to deal with some of the challenges and the practices.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Mark. So you can, if you have something to add, just join the discussion. Mark, do you have something to add here?
Yeah, sure. I think it falls down across the board. Really, it's as Paul said, I think time is one of the biggest issues. I think there's also with senders, there's some lack of knowledge. there's some lack of skills and there's some lack of control as well. People might know what the issues are, have the ability to fix them, but don't have access to get them fixed. I think also in terms of email tooling, with like email building tools, email frameworks, a lot of them are not producing accessible code. Obviously, some are good, some are better than others. Stripe is great, Customer.io is great, but there's yeah, it's not across the board. There are gaps in all these products, and some of them you can create accessible code, but still it might be tucked away. So I think that needs to be improvements there. And then the email clients themselves will often strip out some of the accessible code that we're sending. So we make something, we put in this code, and then it gets removed when it hits the inbox. So it's, accessibility is always about balancing. There's always some kind of compromise. And same with email. You fix one thing and it breaks another. And it's a tough one to fix, really.
Yeah, actually think of, please, Mike.
I think I want to piggyback on both, on a couple of things that both Mark and Paul have brought out. One of the big things is oftentimes accessibility breaks down because all the responsibility lands on one person's shoulders. You don't have a team effect. You don't have a corporate buy-in or a company buy-in, and you don't have across, the engineering and development disciplines all the way across the board. You don't have a very team-oriented effort where between what Mark noted about the knowledge set, there's just not enough shared knowledge there. So, what accessibility becomes ultimately is like the final gate. It's QA. And is it, we go in and we tweak it because our semantic structure, hasn't been done right, or we are passing code that's being used by some of the tools and it's bad code, right? That damages a good existing code. I mean, it goes down to really some of the even basic aspects of just adding correct contextual alt text to the imagery that goes in an email. So I think all those things are where the fundamental breakdown happens.
Yeah, so for now, accessibility is more like social responsibility or like development. That's problem we have to solve because of, in the conferences, usually people say we all need accessibility, but nobody sees the numbers when you implement something, spend more time, learn more books, change your process, but nothing is changed because of you just have more discussion with the designer, with copywriter, you want to prove something, but numbers is not changing. So it's more about performance or about real social responsibility.
I think if I could just comment on it, I think it's actually above that. It starts really at the business value proposition. What companies see as priorities in terms of what they're rolling out, what they're developing, what they're delivering to customers. And the sad truth is, and all the statistics that we have seen prove this, is that accessibility as a discipline, as an attribute, as a feature, and more importantly, as a user interface design, is very low in the prioritization. And that's because it is perceived as a cost of doing business as opposed to something that is really user-centric and user-focused.
Yeah, I totally agree. So and usually, usually marketers don't have any disabilities who send emails, so they don't feel the pain. The pain for them is the number. They always can read what they write. They cannot really understand the big problem for a lot of people. Yes, and we have actually fine numbers here. Mark with email Markup Consortium published the reports with a number of emails. They test a lot of emails and have a number of emails who don't pass even critical and high tests for accessibility. But we have a good news. That number is improved over year. So last year it was 91.97% of email who didn't pass critical and high, and now it's 99.89. So it's hard. Okay, it improved twice, but still very low numbers. I'm not sure that it's confidential change, but still better. So we would like to celebrate this. And the question.
It's small.
It's small. It's small. And to be honest, for me, and I know for all of you too, it's part of my mission to improve this number because of we doing editors, and most of the problems can be solved by your in technical part without knowledge. It just have never happened in email. So, Mark, please start maybe in your observation, in your new report, what changes there? Where the problem, people start to solve the problem?
So yeah, it's very minimal changes we're seeing at the big numbers. When we actually drill down and we start looking at the individual issues, we're seeing slightly bigger improvements. And these improvements we're seeing are largely on the simple attribute settings. So setting a language, setting a direction, setting an alt attribute. We're checking those are included. What the report doesn't do is actually check the values that those are set. So one of the concerns is, are people just passing the tests? Are they, or actually making things accessible? But it's, we are hoping to see some more improvement there. I do see, like, as I go through the report and just generally in my day-to-day life, I do look at a lot of email code, and a lot of stuff is very outdated. I look at email code and it's got fixes from a bug that was fixed 10 years ago is still in that code. So stuff's not getting updated. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's all moving quite slowly, is people aren't updating their emails, or they're just sort of duplicating a template, or some of the tooling they might be using might not have updated in a while and is still creating this out-of-date code so they don't have they've still got the old fixes for old rendering bugs, but they don't have a lot of the new things that we've been learning and researching, investigating around accessibility. Those fixes aren't in there. So it's still a long way to go. I think it's a combination. It's everybody's responsibility. It's the tools, it's the senders, it's the email clients. We do look at the email clients in the reports. So we're seeing some improvements there. Proton Mail, particularly, we know they've shipped quite a lot of updates over the last year. So they've sort of moved up the email client rankings in terms of accessibility. They support a lot more accessible features, HTML features, CSS features. So that's good to see, but it's slow going, but there is some hope there, I think. I hope. Yeah.
Yeah. Somebody wants to add here? Paul, do you want to add something?
Yeah, I've had a look at the report. Mark gave me a sneak preview, which he was very kind to do. And yeah, it's that it's rich with really insightful information about the complexities of of email, and maybe that's something that is a challenge for people, the complexities of the minutiae of certain things that are kind of hard to get the head around. I'm also aware that there's some things that kind of don't feature in the report because of the type of report that is, that fit, I feel like that more like the creative side of things, that is kind of something that we, going back to our earlier point, is something that needs to be addressed as well. And it's that copywriting, as Mike said, about image, alt text, writing copy properly, and actually creating layouts that use white space, which make things easy to read, and those kind of things. They're also important. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's a layered thing, isn't it? And I think what might help people is kind of knowing what to focus on, because there's so many different things. What is it that, and I'm sure we'll come to this, but what is the kind of the thing to tackle first? What can they deal with to kind of help them on that journey, so the needle doesn't move so slowly, so that people can actually get to a point of success, which then may give them momentum to go further. So actually, we've done this, we can move on to the next thing, rather than kind of feeling it's such a an overwhelming task. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, boy, that's, Paul, I hate to tell you, you guys just open up a big can of worms. The word focus alone is, it just opens up just so many avenues for talking, because I think, first and foremost, I don't think companies have any strategies. That's where your focus comes, right? You can pinpoint where we go. So is it workflow? We don't know. Is it a knowledge base? They don't know. Let me just give you, a classic. I was just talking to a CEO of a company a couple of days ago, and they were convinced that as long as their QA people were writing the tools that were checking for the WCAG requirements, and that they were meeting those WCAG requirements, that ultimately what they were producing would be, are you ready for this? Usable and accessible to people with disabilities. I said, that's not true. That is not true. Just because your tool tells you that you've got alt on an image doesn't necessarily mean the person has any context to what that image and why it's there. That's a very simple, basic thing. Yeah. Or order of forms. Why are they like this? So I do think that first and foremost, there's got to be a commitment from the top, and I hate to be redundant, to a strategy, and there's got to be a team that takes the entire life cycle of whatever it is that we're developing of the email from our email engines, so that if we're developing a client that our customers are using, that client provides the templates, provides the back end, provides the prompting that they need to help the users who are using those clients to realize, oh, I just put an image in here and it needs all that. Well, thanks for the prompt. Now I can put that in and describe it, right? Something simple, very simple like that. That kind of mindset needs to be implemented. It's just not there. That's, again, not to say that the email accessibility world is bad or going in the wrong direction. Mark emphasized his report shows that there is some small incremental progress being made. And if you compare that to the WebAIM report that on websites basically went backwards by almost 2%, right? So we've got that to talk about. But I'm telling you, it's got to start at the top. It's got to start by a commitment, and at the top for businesses, and at the top for the standards industry, and at the top for the governments. These are all the organizations who control where we are going forward from an accessibility standpoint.
Yeah, and as Mark also mentioned, that one of the reasons of a problem is a lack of processes that control this, because if we just copy previous, even if you fix something in one email, we then copy from previous template, and we again with errors. Because of testing them, it takes time. Sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it just you think that it looks good. You check with I don't know, email on ACID or some other tools. You see, okay, it even works with the dark mode. So we don't need to do any changes. By the way, do you know any community with the people who can do real human like feedback about our design? They say, okay, I can read this because of we had a discussion with the Mark, I think a year or 2 years ago, about accessibility, and he thought, okay, when I have a centered aligned text, sometimes I just keep it because it's not very important for me. I don't want to pay my attention on this. So I can understand. Certainly I can read, but it's hard. It's better to skip. So do we have any community where we can have a feedback from people with a different conditions?
They're all over the place. I mean, everywhere you go, there are, this is the beautiful thing. This is a sad truth, but it's also a beautiful thing about people with disabilities and the communities of people with disabilities. Number one, they have learned, because society as a whole, generationally, have failed them, that they've learned to accept whatever they get, and then they try to work around it in whatever way they can, right? That is a very, very common attribute of most people with disabilities, regardless of what those disabilities are. Having said that, I will also tell you that they, as a collective group, and what they make up, people with disabilities as a collective group are almost 1/4 of the entire population of the earth, right? They will be the first one to jump in and help you. They want to. They realize, they appreciate that their input to you So when you're performing user studies, which we should be doing, when you're performing user research, these are the folks that you need to be doing those walkthroughs with, those talk out loud sessions to better understand their user experience. But they're all over Europe. I mean, they're all over. The National Federation for the Blind, the BBC's got connections to their people over in the UK. I mean, they're just everywhere, right? RNIB is over there for the. I keep talking about the blind agents, but there are other constituency organizations that support all disabilities, regardless of what they are, all over, and they will most definitely contribute and help.
Yeah, it's very important, especially for me. My experience, first time I really understand that is a big problem because of my, first time I met accessibility requirement when I wanted to release some product and said, no, it doesn't work. You have to be accessibility compliant. You have to change your product. It was like a requirement.
Yeah.
But later I met the community who used our application with screen readers, and I saw how quickly they can do things, and I understood, okay, if my alt text for button, I just have a remove without mention what exactly have to be removed from the, row in a table.
Right.
They will never know. Okay, I see these people. And then I realized that I have a nephew of my employee has dyslexia, and they never knew about this until they started to write articles about accessibility in email. Okay, maybe my nephew have the problem. He is not lazy to read. He just and they check and it is. So we just even don't know that we have a problems. Thank you for that. And another thing, like Mark mentioned, that is the responsibility of the tools that must to provide accessible from technical side. It's like also Mike mentioned, it's a discipline for whole team, not only a person who provides, it's also copywriter and designers. Thank you, Paul, for mentioning this. And also email clients, so whole ecosystem. So, and the question here that some email clients can slip out or fail to some preserved code that supports accessibility related behavior or some user experience. And the question in practice, how does that affect the user experience? And what can team realistically do to reduce any damage because of, email client changing our code? we didn't allow them to do this. So what we can do here? Maybe dark mode. Dark mode is the best example. They break everything.
Yeah, the forced dark mode is a real nightmare, and it can ruin your color contrast. And it's the email client is trying to make something more accessible by respecting the user preference of having dark mode, but in doing so, they're forcing the colors into something that isn't accessible. And we really want the email clients to help here, but I think we have to work in the world that we live in. Like the email clients are making these issues, and we can't just say, oh, my code's accessible in the browser and it's the email client's responsibility when it hits the inbox. Now it's their fault that it's not accessible. I mean, it is their fault it's not accessible, but also we if you're aware of that, then it's your fault. If you're aware that the email client is making changes, it's your fault because you're sending it anyway. So you're making it not accessible. So there's certain things we can do. Like simple semantic code works across the board. If you just send an email, no styling, like few heading tags, few link tags, it works. It's accessible across everything. And light mode, dark mode, everywhere, it works. It's when we start adding design, it's generally when a lot of the accessibility issues come into place. Something like working with dark mode and working with the forced dark mode, having a strong contrast when you're going into forced dark mode generally helps, but also testing with this. One thing I quite often do is I will, because when with the Gmail, particularly with the forced dark mode and Outlook as well, when they change the colors, it can look quite weird. I like to use a text box. So if you have like black and white or sort of off black, off white text and background, and then have your colors and have your design going on around that, and just keep like the text quite simple, like black and white text, either white on black or black and white, whatever whatever your preference is there, if you light mode or dark mode, I guess. And then allowing the email clients, when they force dark mode, they'll just invert that. So it will go from black text on white to white text on black. And the colors around it will mess up, but that doesn't matter because you're not putting text over it. So it doesn't matter so much. It's not on brand anymore, which is annoying, but it doesn't matter so much in situations like that, I think.
Can I just follow on to that? Because I think an approach that I've taken is that so if an organization's got a color palette for its branding, then as a designer, as a consideration in that you have dark mode, which is a different color palette from your your normal color palette. So you have it almost a dark mode color palette, which will then, as Mark described, it'll fare much better when it translates on those more aggressive email clients that are going to change colors all over the place. I've found some success in using this method by simply having like off whites and not black, but just very dark greys, and that's worked really well. So yeah, I'd advocate that absolutely, because it's what you'd have to do is to Mike's point is that you'd have to have buy-in from obviously brand managers and things like that. That would be what the expected experience would be for customers, but that's far better than having this experience where you've got strange colors going on and color contrast is causing issues with readability and what have you. So there's that side of it. There's also as well is the whole journey. So once somebody leaves an email, what's the experience like for that person when they go onto the app or the website that's connected to it? Because it's what I found out quite often is that the website or the app won't be coded or dark mode won't even be considered for that. So what you'll find is that you'll deliver dark mode in the email when they go to the app or the web page, that they'll be in light mode. So it's something to consider, that in that journey in its entirety, and think about and how that works. And then as I've done and as I am doing at the moment is kind of have a dialogue and have a discussion with those responsible for the design and the build of the website to kind of make sure that they align and the experience is consistent across them.
Yeah, I think that those are good. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dmytro. Go ahead.
No, please. I just want to ask. Okay, I will ask. One of the suggestions Mark did: do things as simple as possible. So when you simplify, you will have better result, because of when you do advanced design, like all designers want to do something very specific, and it causes a lot of problems for coders and usually generates accessibility issues. But from other side, example of a list, like typical dotted list, unnumbered. So it's easy to do just ULLE text with HTML. And in this case, accessibility is well known how to read this. But designers always want to do some like image or some snowflake or just design it as a table, as a real design project. And we still have to understand, okay, it's an item. We need to use some tricks for this. And especially with interactivity in email, we always have a challenge between complexity and good for some devices, and simplicity and accessibility. Where is the balance? Maybe you have some tricks. Maybe you have some suggestions how to find this balance.
Yeah,
so Mike, I interrupted you.
No. So, well, actually, this will kind of feed in that. Your question is a good one. It kind of feeds into where I was going. So, listening to Mark and Paul and yourself, I couldn't help but think about a couple of words that were very common in the standards world that I've been working with in government. And two words that always came up were interoperability, right? And handshaking, right? Functionally, what we're talking about is that there's a collaboration between your interface, your client, and the AT, the assistive technology that people with disabilities are using, regardless again of what that is. And things have to be interoperable. They have to handshake. They've got to collaborate together in order for the user experience from the client side, from the user side, to be optimal. It probably will never be perfect. We've talked about some disabilities here that I think sound like they're the same, but they're not. Dmytro, you were talking about, what did you say was a nephew or a cousin relative with dyslexia, right? So you take dyslexia, people think dyslexia is a visual disability. It's not. It is a cognitive disability. So you've got that. And then you talk about people who are low vision and people who are blind. Not to mention individuals who are otherwise tied to a keyboard. The user experience for each one of those communities of people with disability can be very, very different. Not always, but sometimes very dramatically different. So you can't just say, if I code it this way, it's going to be great for everybody. Your requirements document that you've built for this application needs to address the various communities of people with disabilities. And at heart, it should allow for user preferences. You should allow the user to be able to set things. So if you're dealing with dark mode and you have not tested with color contrast tools that are out there to help you to test what my color schemes look like, if I'm in dark mode or light mode, then you haven't really, frankly speaking, you haven't done your UX or your QA properly, your development at that level. Those kind of things need to be. Look, we're not even talking about development or designer protocols here that are outside of the norm. These are day-to-day things that developers have been doing from the day that I don't know, HP and Xerox and IBM rolled out the first computers. My gosh, we're still dealing with the same issues. These are common workflow things that should be done, and we need to integrate the people with disabilities into that discipline, into those disciplines. That'll fix it.
So one of the ideas that we have to support like different options. I want to do to have like a poor design, but a good content. And I have in the user preference check this, and we should create several segments for this. Is it your suggestion here?
Well, that's an option. I don't know what Mark and Paul feel about that. Is one way to tackle it. What you want to do, the principle here is user preference, right? Yeah. We started off with the web doing one major principle, and that was to separate a structure from design, right? So that's why we've got HTML. We separated the style from the structure. That's the principle. We have to do the same thing at this level, giving users the preference to be able to, adopt or infuse the design.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and it's not always because of sometimes accessibility and disabilities is not all because of my condition. I can be in a transport, standing and shaking in a dark time. So I can read email good when I sit in the office in a big screen. I'm okay. But in some conditions, it's not necessarily have to be problem with it's like you said, it's cognitive more than. Yeah, great. Thank you. Yeah, and sorry, maybe I always interrupt people, so it's just my.
Hey, I do the same thing. I'm sorry, Mark and Paul. Just imagine, Paul, particularly, you probably appreciate this. I'm in Hyde Park right now. That's the way I'm always on a soapbox trying to, and I've been doing it for 40 years. Come on, get it. It's not that hard.
I think the list thing is I say it a lot, that whole let's have a fancy icon and what have you, and there's good reasons why you might have iconography in but it's kind of, it can be done right and it can be done quite frankly badly as well. But it kind of, for me, it kind of feels thinking about it, it's almost like an extension of the all image email thing that we were where we were like what 10, 15 years ago, and perhaps in some cases we probably still are today, where we say, well, actually, you know what, form is far more important than function. Let's stick an image in there that'll do the job. Using list items and trying to hack them with layouts to make, you know, put iconography in is almost like it's the same kind of thing, maybe a little more subtle, but you're still trying to, it's form of a function, where I'd advocate using, you know, proper list items for list items because of as Mike put it, because that's the expected experience you'd have for somebody who simply needs to get through that list and understand what the, you know, what the communication is of that particular piece of text. So yeah, I mean, I see it, but I would always push for, you know, not going down that route. It's not always easy, and it is a discussion, and you kind of have to give a good case for it. Sometimes you have to, you know, choose your battles as well when you're talking about a bigger piece of work. But but it, you know, I think in addition to that, it's kind of like, you know, being in a position to say, actually, you know, as a best practice, this is what we should be doing, this is what we should avoid doing, and this is an alternative way we can do that. So some of it's education as well. So it's, you know, if you think about design, or a designer solves a problem, the solution might, in their head, might be, oh, this is how we'll do it, and actually there's a different way of doing it in achieving the same goal, but it's much better from an accessibility point of view. But it does take a lot, and this is probably where some of those things are that we were talking about at the beginning. Why is it the needle moving so slowly? Because in some cases, some of the challenges require a bit more thought and a bit more consideration. But my confidence is that we can break through those things and establish new standards that will help us to kind of say, actually, like we do often now with imagery and you know, with typography, we are using paragraphs where we weren't before. We are using headings where we weren't before. You know, we've moved a long way from, you know, 15 years ago, and I think that's one of those things that is probably one of the things that we kind of need to kind of tackle and nail, and you know, to do better in.
Yeah, and again, if you would say this to our sales teams, they would say, no, because of this, the image works much better than what you wrote. But anyway, it's what I would like to discuss, and Mike recently had a talk about, is accessibility as a shared team responsibility rather than one specialist or just a final QA team to check. Especially, it's the same really for developers. You never have to do responsibility on a QA. It has to be responsibility in developer or business analytic. And the same with email production. It has to be a team responsibility. Yeah. So in a real email workflow, what does this shared responsibility require? Is there some processes? How to break down the responsibility? How to embed the culture into a team to do everything right? Mike.
Oh, you want me to talk about that? Because I thought Paul, well, I mean, I thought Paul had really kind of hit on it. It's there is, first of all, it is the knowledge and the awareness, right? It starts there. It's that at every level in a corporate hierarchy or across a team, people don't have the knowledge, the inherent knowledge of what it means. They hear accessibility and they probably always think of the blind and maybe the deaf, maybe, right? But always the blind, because we're such a screen reader oriented world, because so many of the standards were designed, the accessibility standards were designed to address their technologies. But there's a much broader set and a much deeper set of knowledge that needs to be done. So first and foremost, there's got to be a knowledge share across every aspect of the corporate discipline. It has to be, I think you used the word, and you're absolutely right, Dmytro, a corporate culture. It has to be. I'm working with the International Association for Accessibility Professionals right now. And a part of what we're working on is basically a maturity model and how to build up to that. So a company that has a maturity model that addresses accessibility across all its disabilities, whether it's sales, whether it's marketing, whether it's development, whether it's the C-suite folks, it doesn't matter. Wherever it is, it needs to be understood, and everybody needs to know what their role and what their responsibility is to accessibility from that standpoint. So it starts from the top and works its way down. This isn't a bottom up. This is a top down, because I guarantee you, and I've seen this, I've worked in companies, that have nearly 200,000 employees in them, right? If you don't get buy-in from the top, you will never get it anywhere else. I spent years at the bottom, so to speak, yelling as loud as I am right now, and got zero. Zero.
So the first, we have to start from the top, and also find embedding the culture. It means we should have some processes, some testing, some knowledge base for different roles. Do you have any example, like maybe you can share? So it's an example how one company shared this knowledge for accessibility across a company. Do you have any case studies of this?
I could give examples, but I'm sure Mark and Paul probably have some, and you're a little bit more closely tied to the email world, so it might be good to bring in one or two of those.
Mark, Paul, do you have any real case study how to implement accessibility into product culture?
From my point of view, I'm primarily a developer, and that's where my knowledge base is. And as a developer, it's my job to write code that works. If the code is not accessible, it doesn't work. And I think that's just and that should happen at every stage. Like a designer, it's their job to make a design look good and make that design work. And part of that is it should be accessible. If it's not accessible, it doesn't work, and so on. Same for copy, same for every area, I think. And I could say, oh, this design isn't accessible, or it doesn't look accessible, but I can't fix it because I'm not a designer. I could say, oh, let's fix this color contrast. It'll look terrible because I'm not a designer. But it will, that's why you need the individual sort of responsibility as well, I think. And part of that, as Mike was saying, it's the top down that we need to sort of get people responsible for their areas, and every area needs to be responsible for making things accessible.
So it means that we need to embed a definition of done for each task we do. So for design, for copywriting, and it has to be documented. Everybody has to pass through a checkbox. I did this, we do, committed to GitHub, or I don't know. If it's not committed, it's not done. If it's not tested, or it's not done. If it's not validated by accessibility,
we already have this quite a lot with inbox testing. We have that culture of testing it across inboxes, and it's I've done that, right, I'm out. And that's what I used to do. I used to be guilty of that because I didn't know about accessibility, and I would just go, right, it works in every inbox, I'm a genius, I'm done. And then I learned about accessibility. I was like, oh no, it's all broken. Everything I've done is wrong, and I need to fix it. And I think it's getting that culture. We have the culture of testing. We have that culture of optimizing things, but it's just putting accessibility into that culture already.
So Paul and Mark, it's a question for me. So I need answers to know. So which part of accessibility you think should built into the system? So marketing should never know about this, but it always has to be fixed automatically. What tool have to implement? So I'm writing because of it's what is my responsibility. So what do you think has to be implemented by default in tools?
Since I've got to my notes now, so I can see where I was going to go with. So let me just try to, especially for the audience, here's how I've broken it down, okay? Right or wrong, feel free to jump in. Copy owns all text and link text. Design owns contrast and visual hierarchy. Development owns the semantic implementation, right? The coding at that level. QA owns the testing with real users and assistive technology. Okay, that's the line, that's the process that you're looking for. Now, here's the problem. Okay, if those teams are not working together, if the handoff doesn't take place, those checkboxes, some will get checked, some won't. There's got to be requirements that address those processes, and there's got to be good communication between each of those disciplines. Then this happens, and then what you're producing is an accessible and usable experience for users.
So yes, and really, it's not only accessibility issue to communicate between the team, to share the value, not just to do work you require to do. And and in this line between the team and the client or recipient, now we have another reader of our email, which is AI, that reads our email, and now we have some restriction that really accessibility became more relevant now, because of when you send image email, person can read it, but AI cannot. So it can, but it don't want to spend all this effort to parse every image in your email. How you think AI, like all the inbox summaries, changing accessibility?
I think it makes, for me, it's kind of funny because it takes me back to when I started talking about taking text out of images, way back, and and I've written about it, and it's been about, having copy in HTML and not in images. And here we are in a place where AI needs to see that text in the HTML so it can read it and give you a good summary. So it's really down to the quality of that content, right? So to Mike's point earlier, this is why we need the copywriters involved. And I kind of feel that they get excluded so much, and actually they should be very much involved in the process. We've already kind of established that, really, everyone in the conversation. But I think it is more relevant, and I think it's a case of, because it is reasonably new, it's been around a little while now, is keeping an eye on it and understanding how AI writes that content, and not just letting it do it and without examining it a little bit, but actually asking the question, what is it actually, how is it summarizing? Does it make sense for the customer or the recipient, or is it actually saying something that's not helpful? Because I think we can't just be just accept that what it's written is what it's written. We probably need to do some experimentation. But I think it's if anything, it builds a case more and more for using images well, using images for the to present photography or illustration, and having text in the code.
Yeah. So for me, yes. Now it's much easier for me to persuade the customers to do accessible email, because you don't care that people, you think that people can read it. AI cannot. So you must do this for AI. And they we understand this. So they didn't care about real people for some reason. They think that it works, but they care about AI.
That's the sort of the thing that's getting people to take accessibility seriously. They have to, they won't do it for accessibility. They won't do it for humans, but they will do it for the machines. But I think there is that sort of overlap that if you make something accessible, if you're thinking about semantic code and semantic markup, having structure to the code, having hierarchy to the code, that makes it more accessible. That makes it better for AI. It's because adding that structure and that hierarchy is designed for computers. So this makes it computer readable. The computer reads it, and then they can interpret it for the assistive technology or for the AI or for whatever.
Now. Go ahead, please.
No, I want to do another question about AI. Mike, please.
I just wanted to comment on something that Mark just mentioned about how it is kind of interesting how AI now has become a third player in terms of user experience here, right? And so if you just look at this from the very simplified accessibility, standby, alt text, AI. So you've got screen readers, right, that are coming in and trying to interpret alt text and render that, and you've got AI trying to ingest it at the same time, and then they build these summarizations of what that is. And if it's an image, well, then you've got all kinds of problems. So generic alt text produces generic summaries, right? Meaningful alt text produces meaningful summations. So that's where the quality needs to be focused on what my AI is doing, as just one example.
Yes, totally agree with you. And AI helps us there just to persuade people to implement, because we have third person here. And from other side, everybody now not everybody, but more than half email marketers, based on statistics, use AI to generate email, or maybe to do QA in email. Do you have any ideas, or maybe from your experience, how to use AI to improve accessibility in your email production?
Yeah. In fact, I've sent out an email today, which is all about this. My latest issue of Type E kind of focuses on ChatGPT, really, because I thought I'd experiment with this very thing and see if it gave me any reasonable results. And actually, I found I was quite surprised. It actually gave me pretty good results. If I, and I'll talk about this in the email, if I'm very specific about what I'm asking it to do, and that I don't ask it too much as well, if I ask it for very specific things, otherwise it can get lost, and it can get to a point where actually its use becomes redundant because it gets too complex to understand what's actually giving, the insights it's giving you as well. So I think there's definitely it has a place. But I think you have to also be careful as well. I don't think we've got yet to a stage where we can not have human kind of analysis of accessibility and implementation. I think that's not where we are. But I think it can give you insights, and for somebody who's new to accessibility, it can give you prompts to lead to ask the right questions about how should I be writing alt text? Is the color contrast working? What's my heading hierarchy looking like? It can at least help you along the journey. I think that's where we're at. And I just want to send it to say as well, I've just tried it on one AI tool. Other tools do give different results, so you do need to be careful. I wouldn't advocate any. But I think again, we're on the start of the journey, but there is a place for it. We just have to be careful with it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's new. It's new technology, so you have to be sort of responsible with it. AI in terms of creating email, it's not great when it's just trying to create raw HTML. Like if you think, was it like 99.88% of emails fail basic tests? It's learning from that. It's not going to create anything good. But if you're using it with frameworks and design systems, then it can. And then those frameworks and design systems, you can make changes to that. So it's not creating the raw HTML. You have like humans still involved at that point. And in terms of testing, it's like, we have sort of automated testing that we have at Customer AI that people can run. And actually, yesterday I just added an AI skill to our agents that will go through and do some more testing. And AI can pick up some of the things that automated testing can't. It can read, for example, the alt text and the text around it, and does it flow in context? Does it make sense? It can look at the language and say, does this language match this language attribute, rather than just checking those values? But still, it doesn't replace the sort of the manual, real world testing that is needed. So I think we need to be very careful that we're not using it as a solution, as a full solution. It's, we don't need to worry about this now because we have AI can do that.
Yeah, I think to complement exactly what Paul and Mark are talking about, the key word here guardrails, right? Am I right? AI is, as we know, is a productivity multiplier, right? It scales, it performs faster than a single human manual effort, right? But it's a risk multiplier as well, because it can't do what it doesn't understand, it doesn't know. And this is where what Mark was just talking about, that whole what the LLMs need to be taught and how they're taught with the data. It needs to be so precise, and it needs to be well guardrailed that if it doesn't, then you're going to actually create a worse experience by implementing AI into the development life cycle.
Yeah. What I also see that a lot of people, especially, I don't know, writing alternative text for images, usually is boring task, and sometimes, like Mark said, it's copy and paste, replacing images, alt text still the same, and it's not descriptive. So AI can very easily help find that alt text doesn't really correspond to the image, or maybe it's what we usually do. We usually use a title of article as an alternative text for image, but it's wrong in case of accessibility, because of it has to describe the image somehow. But yeah, a lot of things. And back for me, as usual, I'm out of control over time. So and we still have a lot of questions. And before we go to the Q&A session, I want to ask some summarization question. If the team cannot implement everything we discussed, what you would suggest can be number one option? So the first thing to start, to change, to improve, to implementing the processes, what it should be doing today. It's like quick idea. What do you think is the most important for teams?
I think I'm going to emphasize something that Paul mentioned and that I did too. Start with copy. It's the simplest. It's not the code, not the design first, believe it or not. It's the copy. If we get that right, if we do right by adding context to the images and whatnot that appear, get that right first. Those folks are in charge of that area. Then I think the rest of it will start to fall in order, because other issues will automatically crop up as a result of. So that's what I would say. Start with copy.
Yeah. So when you do an email in your process, sometimes copywriters start to, it's wrong. So you always have to start with a copy. Yeah, it's a good idea. Something else from Mark and Paul?
Yeah, I think an extension to that is kind of being mindful of what copy you're writing. So, we've mentioned headings a lot in this conversation, and some actually user research that I did. It really struck me how important headings are. Again, we mentioned screen readers, but from a visual and audible point of view, they really help to communicate really quickly in an email what the content covers. So having headings and having a heading hierarchy in your email is something I would say is probably a first key principle. That is your structure essentially of any imagery and anything else that's going to float around it, and get your heading hierarchy right. So so you've got the right sequence of H2s, H3s, H4s in your email. So yeah, that will be the first thing. And on that basis, work to get that right before you kind of go on to the next thing. And then, yeah, that's how I would start.
Good navigational context.
Yeah.
Sorry, a very quick. No, I don't want to ask this question. I will ask when we will go through the Q&A, because I have a lot of questions. But okay, we have to give the word to Alexandra and to our audience. Thank you very much, by the way.
Hi again. It was so interesting. I almost missed our Q&A session, but we have a lot of interesting questions from our audience, and it's the first one. I wonder if there is something in accessibility that's actually the toughest problem to crack.
I think in terms of email, it's the interoperability. It's the different support in the different email clients, and the email clients not respecting the accessible code that we're sending. I think is probably, that's the toughest thing to crack, but it's not necessarily something that we can do. It's something we need the email clients to do. But what the others think?
No,
Yeah,
Because it's out of our control. Yeah.
yeah. Yep.
I think what Mike said earlier, it's that team collaboration. I would say that's something I've got a passion for, that I'm working on, right now. Obviously not right now, but that's something that I'm keen to kind of work on by bringing knowledge to different team members and saying, to copywriters, this is what accessibility looks like, and this is what, and have, help people to know and understand, what needs to be considered and how they can help each other in that as well. But I think, we need to start on that journey. So yeah, that's probably one of the hardest things.
Can I just add one little point here, because I think this tends to be the problem with a lot of companies. They're thinking compliance, conformance, we got to achieve it because there's laws, there's EU, and there's EU. In the IAAP, we are creating a model that is, the theme is progress over perfection. Focus on making progress incrementally. It's a win. Every win is a victory. And then that will help build the team, and it'll probably help build the team morale for sure, and then move forward with the next thing. So progress over perfection.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And
Good
our
suggestion.
next question: which stripped or unsupported accessibility elements create the biggest usability problems for screen reader users?
There's a lot that's stripped, like the things like role attributes, ARIA attributes, which do cause issues, but also you don't need them. You can build your emails without those, and you can build them just using the semantic markup and not have those issues. So it's tough. It's kind of working within the limitations, which I mentioned earlier, which is the target, I think, for what we got to think about.
Yeah. Can I answer that question in a slightly different way? On the mobile first approach to design. Mm-hmm. So if you code your email in a certain way, you may have potential issues with text size and the way that, it's not on all mobiles now, but there's still some around where, if you don't create your email mobile first and code it mobile first, then you're presenting a potential, bad experience on a small screen. So some of these things aren't actually accessibility problems per se. That I would call them usability challenges. And actually, that's as much part of this discussion as as what you might simply think of as the web content accessibility guidelines and things like that. It's some of those things that can be as much of a hindrance to people that we can deal with there.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on what Paul was just saying, the one thing that I'd add to this discussion is the strategic frame of how we look at this. People think that if I have valid HTML, WCAG compliant, Paul just said, that equals an accessible user experience. That's not true. That is definitely not true. So, do what you're supposed to do at the coding level, but then you have to make sure that if you're using VoiceOver with Apple Mail, if you're using NVDA with Outlook, if you're using JAWS with Outlook, if you're using TalkBack with Gmail or Android, you need to test those users with those ATs and those clients. And then you'll know if you're producing accessible email and that the user experience is usable and accessible to them.
I remember in one conference, John Teeth from YAML on ACID did some experiment. He opened email and tried to read it with a screen reader, just a subject line. And it was so big. It was impossible to understand, especially there is emojis in subject line, and it's trying to read all emojis, and some signs like 3 dots and dot, or some like how it reads the sides. And it's very hard when you do a lot of special symbols. Because the first thing would be read from your email is a subject line. And sometimes subject line is hard to read. It's the simplest maybe thing. Yeah, and it's a big challenge. There are so many things.
Thank you. And the next one, because we will have 2 more after this one. Which accessibility mistakes do you still see most often in modern email campaigns, even among experienced teams?
Well, going from the report that we just published this morning, it's language and direction are the 2 things that are missing. 97%, over 97% are missing a direction, and over 95% are missing a language. And that's setting it inside the body of the content, because that's something that I think gets overlooked a lot, because the email is different from web. Web, you would always set those on the HTML tag, and then you're pretty good unless you're changing language. In email, you lose the HTML tag, you lose the head, you lose the body tags, and you just have the content. In webmail, this is particularly. So if you don't,
it's so easy to fix.
Sorry?
It's so easy to fix. Please, everybody, look to your email, add the language, add the direction.
Or the whole bit of content, put a div, wrap everything, put a language and a direction, and that's fixed. Because if you don't do that, it's going to inherit from wherever the email client settings are. So if you've got a right to left language email client and a left to right language email, all your layouts messed up, all your layouts wrong. Your bullet points are on the wrong side, your columns are in the wrong order, your text is all over the place. It doesn't work. It's unreadable. And like if you're using a screen reader, the language is going to be the wrong language. It'll be pronouncing things wrong and using the wrong volume. It's not going to quite work so well. But yeah, I think those are the 2 consistently. Those are the 2 biggest issues that we have through the email Markup Consortium report.
So everybody, you know what to do the next 15 minutes. Just fix this.
Yeah, well, I think we all agree. We're with you, Mark, on that.
I've got a whole list, but I don't think we've got time to go through.
There's a much bigger list. Yeah.
Start from 1.
Yeah, one
that
is earlier we were talking about people in senior leadership who need to care. Call to actions and badly written call to actions. Find out more, or click here. It just isn't going to help somebody understand what to do or where it's going. So that's a really common one. And we're back to the copywriter thing again. Think about what's the next step in the journey. What's going to happen, and what the experience is it going to be. Yeah, and then work through that. Actually, take the time to go to that page or that screen, and understand that actually is that what you'd expect that person to see, or are you actually causing a journey issue here because you've actually sent them to a page and then they don't know what to do because what you've sent them to is something they can't even see, on the screen. So, yeah, buttons and links and things like that, I would say.
Yeah, like Mike said, don't be perfect, just improve every time. You have several suggestions today to improve today.
Yeah. So I would focus on your main call to actions and things like that, and anything like secondary, tertiary things you can deal with later.
I like that, Paul. I like that.
Great.
Thanks. And the next one. Hi, I'd love to know, for teams with limited time and resources, what would you recommend prioritizing first when trying to improve email accessibility?
Get more budget. It's always the answer. It's always the right answer every time. Get more budget, more people, more resources.
We covered this before, kind of, didn't we, with the copy. I think what I would say as well is that when you've created that what element component, you've nailed that button or whatever it is, then build it into your design system so you can reuse it. And so you're not having to waste time doing the same thing again and again and again. And then over time, you're going to build yourself a library of accessible content. Then you're not having to go to the start again. So then you'll have more time to do some other things because you won't have to do the work again. So yeah.
Yes.
Can I
agree with you.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dmytro.
I just wanted to say, if you have a limited resources, no time, simplify. When you simplify things, not do more complicated to support, just do it simple and build your system. Email design system is a good solution. Reuse, not create every time new one.
Yeah.
Create a style guide. That's a leave behind that goes from generation to generation development, right? Mm-hmm. And make sure your pattern libraries are well coded and documented in those pattern libraries. That makes it easier so that you're not repeating the same mistakes over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I love the idea. I think it was last year in Amsterdam in DMA from Mark Robbins, who said that we create an email design system to make it very hard to create bad email. So bad email means not accessible email tool. Create your email design system, simplify your solution, and you can do team even smaller.
Yeah. I found if you bake in those design decisions that are accessible design decisions at that early stage, then you save yourself a lot of work later on.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. And we have the last one. How do you see AI changing email accessibility workflows in the next few years? Do you think it will help teams improve accessibility or create new challenges?
Both.
I think
sorry.
Please.
I think it's how you're using AI, and I think using it with, as we're saying, design systems. If you've got a good solid design system, a good series of components that are well built, that are accessible, and the AI is using those components to build your emails, then it's going to build them well. The content as well, if you train it correctly and you give it enough information on your to make the content and the copy accessible, it can help there. And in terms of reviewing things, AI can pick up things that automated tests can't. So it can help all these areas. However, AI is not that intelligent, even though it's in the name. It makes mistakes. It hallucinates things still. It can cause issues. It doesn't replace humans. It means an individual can do more with less resources. So actually what we're talking about is getting more resources. You can do more if you're using AI. You can get more done in less time. However, everything still needs reviewing and checking and building first. Getting the foundations solid first is really key.
Yeah, absolutely. I like to refer to it as artificial insights rather than artificial intelligence, because it can help, it can prod, it can nudge you. Actually, this is a way of doing it, and you can actually learn from AI, but don't rely on it.
I've treated AI as I think we've all discussed it. It's a tool. It is a very interesting tool, and it has been very helpful for me personally on many different levels. But I kind of use the metaphor of a surgeon. Okay, so we're the surgeons. We're quote unquote the experts. We understand what the issues are. But every surgeon has awesome tools. The tools keep getting better with time. We've seen that happen over time. When you think about when I first started sending email, everything was text, and it was on a terminal. Right now, we're into these very deeply convoluted, dynamic, application-driven things that we're sending out that don't look anything like the first days. So I'm a surgeon, I'm an expert, I know what I want, and I know how to get to where I want. I need tools. And not only that, but a good surgeon has a team of other experts. You take those three things, you put them together in time. We just got to give it time, like every other technology. It'll mature, and we will end up with a technology that fundamentally will change the way that we do everything moving forward in the next century. I won't be there, but I'm just saying.
Exactly. I'm sure. Email clients, when email client changes a lot, certainly everything changing in our workflow, and email clients is changing. I just received today my tickets for my next flights, and whole email was, even when I open it, it shows some widget, and I open the email. It was even hard to see what's inside the email. It says me where have a flight, which company, like confirmation code, everything in this widget. I don't even need to scroll to the real design. So it does it for me. We'll see. The prediction is not a very good thing. We have to be ready and keep, I really like what Mark said, that responsibility on the person who sent press button, not on email client who broke email, not on like that port issue, in the person, not even in your internal design team, in the person who sent press send button. And it's so great discussion. Thank you very much. Is it last question or we have another question?
No, it's not.
You promised that it's last question.
It's not the question. It's thanks from our audience. So it was amazing content, insightful insights, insightful insights. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for our audience for these questions. Today you covered really important topic, and I hope that everyone listened to this webinar and heard ideas and new practical shortcuts for making emails more accessible and inclusive. So the webinar recording will be available on our channel, and we also send a follow-up email with the recording and additional resources. Thank you so much again for being us, and see you at our future webinars.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank you for all work you do all this 15 years and before to improve the world in case of accessibility and other stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.